Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:37. Thanks for letting us be a part of your morning routine here the second day of June. Wrapping up with graduations, end of school, and all that fun summer stuff on the horizon. But we got a busy day here in the nation's capital and a busy weekend to reflect on. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGeneva, 7:35, Byron York, 8:05, Ron Halber of the Jewish Community Relations Council, and then at 8:35, Brendan Steinhauser from the Alliance for Secure AI. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Morning, Julie.
Good morning.
They call it a big, beautiful bill, and I understand the alliteration. I love a good alliteration. But at the same time, no one cares about a bill. People care about tax cuts. And this is a big, beautiful tax cut wrapped up in a reconciliation package. It's now in the hands of the Senate, but it's good to reflect on exactly what tax cuts the original Trump tax cuts from 2017 now made permanent, but also a whole host of new tax cuts that is going to enliven the American economy and, most importantly, keep the American people's money in their hands where it belongs, not in the government cesspool of waste, fraud, and abuse. As the Senate decides what they're going to do, they better recognize exactly, if they vote no, what they're voting no to. Let's bring in Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, because our buddies over there, and you are our buddies, Grover. We love Americans for Tax Reform. You've put out a pretty comprehensive list of the tax cuts in this bill, and they are significant. How would you characterize this reconciliation package?
It is very pro-growth. It will create jobs. We're growing about maybe 1.5% a year. This will take us up to over 3%. And in doing that, that's another 1.5% in growth each year. You do that over a decade, it'll actually reduce the debt and deficit by $4 trillion. Because with more growth, you get more people working, more people paying taxes, fewer people on welfare. It brings in more revenue and reduces government spending. So growth itself is the best way to deal with the deficit for people who are focused on debt and deficit, which we should keep an eye on. I'm particularly interested in making sure people's salaries go up, more people have work, more people have better opportunities. And this takes the expensing, which was in the original bill that passed in 2017, for all new business investment on plant and equipment and so on, and says instead of depreciating over like 10, 20 years, expense it year one. And same thing with research and development, which drops the cost of buying new equipment for workers, which makes them more productive, which means they can get paid more and can demand more because they are worth more with more capital per worker. It doubles the per capita per child tax credit. Or put it the other way, if this bill doesn't get passed and isn't extended, your per child tax credit will be cut in half. Okay, this will protect the tax cuts we have. There's a great big ugly tax increase lurking out there if the Democrats somehow were able to stop this bill. Now, there's a Republican majority in the House and the Senate. The Senate will pass something that looks very much like what the House passed. And the reason for that is not because they're terribly accommodating to the House, which I'm sure they try to be, but they're their own body. But the House and Senate have been working on this for 2 years. Before Trump was elected, they were saying, how are we going to get this done? They went out and had field hearings. Jason Smith, the head of Ways and Means, was out doing field hearings to ask people, what's important to you? What are you focused on? So one of the things this bill did when it passed was the bill that we're now looking to permanently extend, not another 10 years, permanently, out into infinity, okay, farther than you can see. And so that you never have to come back and discuss it again. This will now be law of the land, not for a few years or 10 years or 5 years, but out until somebody decides to further reduce taxes. It doubled the standard deduction. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry, Grover. I'm sort of interested because you've just in the matter of minutes been so convincing here, talking about how we'll have so much growth and job creation, and this will ultimately lead to reductions in debt. But I'd love your assessment of how you think the Republicans are messaging this. Again, there's a lot of conservatives who are frustrated that this bill doesn't do more to control spending. Yes. Many of them see tax cutting as at odds with deficit reduction. But you've just been so thoughtful in communicating why we need to pass this bill. Are the Republicans doing a good job of not only convincing their own party and some of the detractors, but also the American public that we need to pass this bill?
Well, there is always the challenge that ABC, CBS, and NBC and public broadcasting rarely invite you on to have this conversation. And this has been true for a while. And we need to make sure that the president says it more often, the House and Senate leaders say it, Speaker of the House, the Senate leaders. I have seen them say it. I've seen them say it many times. It doesn't get as much attention from the establishment presses, and you can imagine why. They don't find that terribly interesting, although it's very, very important. And you're right. It's tough sometimes for elected officials to repeat themselves over and over and over again because they've heard it 20 times, but the audience they're talking to, this is the first time they've heard it. And growth, bringing down the debt and deficit is extremely important. This is now Kevin Hassett says this, and he's been out doing he'd be a great guy to the economics guy at the White House. He gives a very good presentation on just how you can measure this growth. And we've known this going back to the Reagan years, that if you grow at 1% more per year, you can calculate the reduction in debt and deficit from that.
And Grover, that was my follow-up question here. Quickly, though, I mean, we've known this. We've known it for decades, that this is pro-growth, and when you have pro-growth, the federal government actually makes more money. So all of this nonsense about, how are you going to pay for that tax cut? I mean, you just described what history has shown us in terms of the dynamic income that the federal government gets when you do exactly what this bill does. Why are we still stuck with the same rules that the Congressional Budget Office does when they try to calculate exactly what the so-called cost of a tax cut is?
And the CBO, when we cut the corporate rate for American companies from 35%, which is what it was under Obama and Biden, 35% down to 21%, okay? At 35, we were highest in the world, and higher than China, which is 15 and 25, higher than the European average, stupider than France is not where you want to be on tax policy. Taking that down was hugely helpful in growth, and the corporate income tax with the much lower rate raised a great deal more money every year with the lower rate because people were producing more and creating more wealth in this country. We should focus on, tax cuts are nice. People get to keep their own money or more of their own money, but it also is part of having more growth. Deregulation is the other part of that. We want to outcompete China and Europe and other countries, reduce our own cost of government. What the Democrats want you to do is compete on lower wages. I want to compete on lower taxes and lower cost of government through regulations. That's the better way to compete with China and Europe.
We got to leave it there. But we love Americans for Tax Reform, and we're excited to see you help maneuver this through the Senate. So all eyes
Larry
are
and Julie,
on that.
thank you.